What if I told you that you don't have to think alone? That there's a way to multiply your intelligence by borrowing the minds of others? It sounds strange, I know, but it's one of the most powerful discoveries I ever made. And I learned it not from a book, but from watching the most successful people I interviewed. They all did this, every single one. They surrounded themselves with other minds, not just employees, not just advisors, but a specific type of alliance that I came to call the mastermind. Let me explain what I mean. When I first started my research, I thought success was individual. I thought great people succeeded because they were smarter, more talented, more driven than everyone else. And yes, those things matter. But what I discovered, what really surprised me, was that the most successful people didn't rely on their own minds alone. They deliberately, intentionally, allied themselves with other people. People who thought differently, who had different knowledge, different skills, different perspectives. And they would meet regularly to think together, to solve problems together, to challenge each other's ideas. And something remarkable happened in those meetings, something that I didn't understand at first but eventually became clear. When two or more minds come together in harmony toward a common purpose, a third mind emerges, not literally, but functionally. It's as if there's an intelligence in the room that's greater than any individual mind, an intelligence that generates ideas none of the individuals would have thought of alone. I saw this happen over and over. Andrew Carnegie had his mastermind. Henry Ford had his. Thomas Edison had his. Every successful person I studied had some version of this. And when I asked them about it, they all said the same thing. I couldn't have done this alone. I needed other minds, not just help, not just support, other minds to think with. And that's when I realized this isn't optional. This is essential. If you want to achieve something significant, you can't do it with just your own mind. You need a mastermind. Now let me tell you how I learned this. I was maybe 25 years old, and Andrew Carnegie had agreed to let me interview him. This was extraordinary. Carnegie was one of the richest, most successful men in America, and he was willing to spend time with me, a nobody. I was nervous. I had my questions prepared. I wanted to understand how he'd built his steel empire, and I expected him to talk about strategy or business tactics or his personal drive. But that's not what he talked about. He talked about his mastermind. He said, "Hill, I didn't build this empire alone. I surrounded myself with men who knew things I didn't know, and we met every week to think together." And that's the secret. I didn't understand it then. I thought he was being modest, giving credit to his team, but he wasn't. He was telling me the literal truth. He couldn't have succeeded without those other minds, not because he needed their labor, but because he needed their thinking, their perspectives, their challenges to his ideas. And over time, as I interviewed more people, I kept hearing the same thing. I have a group of advisors I meet regularly with. I couldn't have done this without. Always other minds, always collaboration, always this idea that thinking together produces better results than thinking alone. And eventually I understood. This is a principle, a law almost, the mastermind principle. And it works like this. When two or more people come together with a shared purpose, and they're in harmony, meaning they trust each other, they're committed to the same goal, they're willing to be honest, something happens. Their minds synchronize, not literally, but functionally. They start building on each other's ideas. One person says something, another person adds to it, a third person challenges it, and suddenly an idea emerges that none of them would have thought of alone. It's not magic. It's just how minds work when they collaborate. Instead of competing, instead of protecting their own ideas, they synergize. And the result is better thinking, faster problem solving, more creative solutions. This is what Carnegie understood. This is what all the successful people understood. And this is what I eventually built into my own work. I couldn't have written my book alone. I needed other minds, people who challenged my thinking, who pointed out where I was wrong, who added ideas I hadn't considered, and I created my own mastermind. A small group of people who met with me regularly to think through the material, to help me organize it, to test my ideas. And that book wouldn't exist without them, not because they wrote it, but because they helped me think it. And that's the power of the mastermind. It's not about delegation. It's not about getting help with tasks. It's about accessing intelligence that you don't have alone. Now let me explain what makes a mastermind different from just a group of people. Because not every group is a mastermind. You could have 10 advisors and still not have a mastermind. A mastermind requires specific conditions. First, harmony. The people in your mastermind have to trust each other. They have to be genuinely supportive, not competitive, not jealous, not protecting their own interests. They have to want the success of the group more than their own individual recognition. If there's conflict, if there's ego, if people are holding back their best ideas, it's not a mastermind. It's just a meeting. Second, a common purpose. Everyone in the mastermind has to be working toward the same goal, or at least compatible goals. If people are pulling in different directions, if they want different outcomes, the minds won't synchronize. There has to be alignment, a shared vision, something everyone is committed to. Third, diversity of thought. This is critical. You don't want 5 people who all think the same way. You want people with different backgrounds, different expertise, different perspectives, because the power of the mastermind comes from the collision of different ideas. If everyone agrees, there's no creative friction, no new thinking. You need respectful disagreement. People who will challenge you, who will say, "Have you considered this?" Or, "I think you're wrong about that." And you have to be willing to hear it without defensiveness. That's when the mastermind works. When people feel safe to disagree, to push back, to offer ideas that might sound strange, because that's where the breakthroughs come from. Not from consensus, from creative tension, managed well. Fourth, regularity. A mastermind isn't a one-time meeting. It's an ongoing practice. You meet weekly or monthly or whatever rhythm works, but you meet consistently because the power builds over time. The minds learn to work together. They develop a rhythm, a trust, a shorthand, and the thinking gets better and better. If you only meet once or twice, you don't get that. You need repetition, commitment, over months, over years. That's when the mastermind becomes truly powerful. Now I want to tell you about my first mastermind, the one I created while writing my book. I gathered 5 people, not employees, not people who worked for me, just people I respected, who had different skills, different knowledge. One was a businessman. One was a psychologist. One was a writer. One was someone who'd failed multiple times and learned from it. And one was someone who challenged everything I said, who made me defend my ideas. And we met every 2 weeks for 2 hours. And we had one rule: no idea is sacred. Everything can be questioned, challenged, improved. And in those meetings, my thinking changed. Ideas I thought were solid turned out to be half-formed. Concepts I was sure about, they poked holes in, and I had to go back, rethink, refine, and the book got so much better because I wasn't thinking alone anymore. I was thinking with 5 other minds, and together we created something I could never have created alone. That's the mastermind. And here's what I want you to understand. You don't have to be Andrew Carnegie to have a mastermind. You don't need famous people or powerful people. You just need people who think well, who are committed, who are willing to engage. I've seen masterminds of school teachers, of small business owners, of artists, of people just starting out. It doesn't matter what level you're at. What matters is the quality of thinking, the commitment to the process, the willingness to be honest. And if you can find even 2 or 3 people who meet those criteria, you can create a mastermind, and it will change everything for your work, for your thinking, for your success, because you won't be thinking alone anymore. You'll be thinking with other minds, and that multiplies your intelligence exponentially. Now let me address something. Some people hear this and think, I don't need other people. I can figure things out myself, and I understand that. I felt that way too. I was independent, proud. I didn't want to admit I needed help. But here's what I learned. Needing other minds isn't weakness, it's intelligence. The smartest people recognize the limits of their own thinking, and they deliberately seek out other perspectives because they know they have blind spots, biases, limited knowledge, and other people can see what they can't see, can think what they can't think, and that makes them better, stronger, more capable. So if you're resisting this, if you're thinking, I should be able to do this alone, I want to challenge that. Why should you? Why limit yourself to one mind when you could have 3 or 5 or 7 minds working on your problems? That's not weakness. That's strategy. And every successful person I ever met understood that. They didn't try to do it alone. They built masterminds. And that's a big part of why they succeeded. Now, let me tell you what happens in a mastermind meeting, because it's not random conversation. There's a structure, a process. When my mastermind met, we'd start with each person sharing where they were stuck, what problem they were trying to solve, what decision they were wrestling with, and then the group would focus on that problem, one at a time, and we'd think together. Someone would say, have you tried? Someone else would say, what if you? Another person would challenge an assumption. Are you sure that's true? And slowly, through that back and forth, solutions would emerge. Not from one person, from the collective thinking, the group mind, and the person with the problem would leave with clarity, with new ideas, with a path forward, and then the next person would share, and we'd do it again. This wasn't socializing. This was serious thinking, focused, intentional, and it required everyone to be fully present, fully engaged, no distractions, no half-listening, because the mastermind only works if everyone is contributing their best thinking. If people are checking out or just waiting for their turn, it doesn't work. You need active participation from everyone. That's what creates the synergy. Now, some people ask, how do you find mastermind members? And that's a good question. You're looking for people who think well, who are committed to growth, who can be honest without being cruel, who want to see others succeed. Not people who need to be the smartest in the room, not people who dominate conversations, not people who get defensive when challenged. You want humble, intelligent, generous thinkers, and they're not always easy to find, but they exist. And when you find them, when you invite them to a mastermind, most of them will say yes, because they recognize the value. They want the same thing you want: better thinking, faster growth, and they know this is how you get it. So you start by identifying a few people you respect, people who think differently than you, and you invite them. I'm creating a mastermind, a group that meets to think together, to help each other solve problems. Would you be interested? And you explain the commitment, the regularity, the expectation of honesty, and if they're the right people, they'll understand, and they'll join, and then you build it together over time, and it becomes one of the most valuable things in your life. I can tell you from experience, my mastermind was more valuable than any book I read, than any course I took, because it was living intelligence, responding to my actual problems in real time. That's irreplaceable. And if you build one, you'll see what I mean. I want to go deeper now into why the mastermind works, because understanding the mechanism makes it more powerful, makes you more likely to actually do it. When I first encountered this principle, I thought it was just about getting advice, asking smart people what they think. But it's not that simple. It's much more profound than that. There's something that happens when minds truly collaborate. Something almost, spiritual, not religious. But there's an energy that gets created. Carnegie called it the third mind. He said when two minds work together in harmony, a third invisible mind appears. And at first I thought, that's poetic, but is it real? And then I experienced it. In my own mastermind, we'd be discussing some problem I was stuck on, and someone would say something, and someone else would build on it, and I'd add something, and suddenly an idea would emerge that none of us had brought to the table. It came from the interaction, from the synergy, and I realized Carnegie was right. There is a third mind. It's not one person's idea. It's not even a combination of ideas. It's something new, created by the dynamic, the flow of thinking back and forth. And that's when I understood this isn't just practical. This is almost like a law of nature. When you put compatible elements together, something new emerges. Chemistry works this way. You combine elements, you get compounds with completely different properties. The mastermind works the same way. You combine minds in harmony toward a purpose, and you get thinking that transcends any individual capacity. This is why the most successful people rely on masterminds. Not because they're weak, because they understand this principle. They know that multiplication happens through collaboration. Now let me tell you about the practical side. How do you actually run a mastermind? Because structure matters. Without structure, it becomes just a social group, people talking but not really thinking together. Here's what worked for me, and what I saw work for others. First, set a regular schedule, same day, same time, every week or every 2 weeks. Consistency creates momentum. It creates accountability. People show up because it's part of their rhythm. If you make it sporadic, let's meet when we can, it dies. People get busy. Other things take priority. But if it's Tuesday at 7 p.m. every week, it becomes non-negotiable, part of the structure of life. Second, have a facilitator, someone who keeps the conversation on track, who makes sure everyone gets time, who gently redirects if someone is dominating. This doesn't have to be the same person every time. You can rotate, but someone needs to hold that role. Otherwise, the meeting wanders. People talk over each other. The productive tension becomes chaos. Third, each meeting focus on real problems, not theory, not abstract discussion, actual current challenges. Someone says, I'm trying to decide whether to, or I'm stuck on, and the group focuses on that. For 15 minutes, or 20, or however long it takes, and then move to the next person. This keeps it practical, grounded, useful. If it becomes just philosophical discussion, people stop showing up because it's not helping them. But if they leave with clarity, with solutions, with new thinking, they come back. Every time. Fourth, create safety. This is maybe the most important. People have to feel safe, to be honest, to admit they don't know, to share their failures, to ask stupid questions. If there's judgment, if there's criticism, if people feel like they have to perform, the mastermind fails, because real thinking requires vulnerability. You have to be willing to say, I'm confused, or I tried this and it didn't work, or I don't know what to do. And if the group responds with judgment or superiority, people shut down. They stop sharing the real problems. They only share what makes them look good, and then the mastermind becomes useless. So you have to establish this from the beginning. This is a place where we're honest, where we admit what we don't know, where we help each other without judgment. And you model it. You go first. You share your confusion, your failures, your uncertainty, and that gives others permission. And slowly, the safety builds, and that's when the real thinking starts to happen. Now, I want to talk about something that surprised me. The mastermind doesn't just help with the problems you bring. It changes how you think all the time. After being in a mastermind for 6 months, a year, you start to internalize the other minds. You start asking yourself, what would John say about this? Or, how would Sarah challenge this assumption? You carry the mastermind with you, even when you're not in the meeting, and that's when the real transformation happens. Because you're not just getting good advice occasionally, you're developing better thinking permanently. Your own mind gets sharper from the constant exposure to other minds. This happened to me. After a year in my mastermind, I noticed I was thinking differently. I was questioning my assumptions more. I was considering perspectives I wouldn't have considered before. I was catching my own blind spots because I'd internalized the thinking of the group. They'd trained my mind without trying to, just by being there, by thinking with me week after week, and that's a gift. That lasts long after the mastermind ends. Now let me address a concern people have. What if I don't have anything to contribute? What if everyone else is smarter than me? And I understand that fear. I felt it too. When Carnegie invited me into discussions with successful businessmen, I thought, what do I have to offer? I'm nobody. But here's what I learned. Value in a mastermind doesn't come from being the smartest. It comes from being honest, from asking good questions, from noticing things others miss. Sometimes the most valuable person in the mastermind is the one who says, I don't understand. Can you explain that differently? Because that forces clarity, makes people rethink their assumptions. Or the person who says, that sounds good, but what's the risk? That's not being negative, that's adding perspective, helping someone see the full picture. You don't have to be the expert. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be engaged, thoughtful, honest. And that's valuable to everyone. So don't disqualify yourself. Don't think, I'm not ready for a mastermind. If you're committed to growth, if you're willing to think seriously, if you can be honest and supportive, you're ready. Find others at a similar stage, or slightly ahead, or even slightly behind. It doesn't matter. What matters is the quality of thinking, the commitment to helping each other. That creates value for everyone. Now let me tell you about the mistakes I've seen, because I've watched many masterminds fail, and it's usually for predictable reasons. Mistake 1, no clear purpose. People get together and they talk, but there's no shared goal. Everyone wants something different, and the meetings drift, become social, which is fine, but it's not a mastermind. You need alignment. Everyone working toward compatible goals, even if the specifics differ. Mistake 2, one person dominates. There's always someone who talks more, who has stronger opinions, who needs to be heard, and if that's not managed, the mastermind becomes their platform, and everyone else checks out. The facilitator has to manage this, gently but firmly. Thanks, John. Let's hear from Sarah now. Or, we need to move on to give everyone time. It's not rude. It's necessary for the mastermind to function. Mistake 3, no accountability. People say, I'm going to do this, and then next meeting, no one asks, did you do it? And without accountability, the mastermind becomes just talk, no action, no results. So you build in accountability. At the end of each meeting, what are you committing to before next time? And at the start of the next meeting, did you do what you said? Not to shame anyone, but to create momentum, to make sure thinking leads to action. Mistake 4, letting it become a complaint session. People venting about their problems without looking for solutions, and that's toxic. It drains energy, makes people not want to come. So you have to redirect. I hear that's frustrating. What do you want to do about it? Shift from complaining to problem solving. That keeps the energy constructive. And if someone keeps complaining without wanting to change, you might need to have a conversation. This doesn't seem to be working for you. Maybe the mastermind isn't the right fit right now. That's hard, but necessary to protect the group. Now, I want to talk about how long a mastermind should last. Some people think it's forever. Once you start, you never stop, and that can work. If the group keeps growing together, keeps challenging each other. But sometimes a mastermind has a natural lifespan. You work together for a year or 2 years, you help each other through a particular phase, and then you've outgrown each other, or your goals diverge, or the energy fades, and that's okay. It doesn't mean it failed. It means it served its purpose, and now it's time for something new. Maybe you form a new mastermind with different people, at a different level. Or maybe you take a break and later come back to it. The point is, don't force it. If a mastermind is no longer serving everyone, let it end. Gracefully, gratefully, and trust that the value you gained stays with you. I've been in multiple masterminds over my life. Some lasted 6 months, some lasted years. Each one was valuable for that time. And when it ended, I was grateful for what it gave me and ready for the next phase. That's healthy. That's natural. Don't cling to something that's run its course. Now let me address something important. Some people worry, what if someone steals my ideas? And I understand that. You're sharing your thinking, your plans, your strategies. What if someone takes them? Here's what I learned. In a real mastermind, with the right people, this doesn't happen. Because everyone is focused on their own work, they're not looking to copy yours. They're using the mastermind to develop their own thinking, not to steal someone else's. And if you're worried about this, it might mean you don't have the right people, because trust is foundational. If you don't trust the people in your mastermind, it won't work anyway. You'll hold back. You won't share the real problems, and then it's useless. So choose carefully. Choose people with integrity, with their own ambitions, who don't need to steal because they're building their own thing, and then trust them. Share openly, and you'll find they do the same, and everyone benefits more than they would from holding back. Now, let me tell you about the compound effect of a mastermind. When you meet once or twice, you get some value, some new ideas, some clarity. But when you meet weekly for months, something else happens. The thinking compounds. Ideas build on previous ideas. Insights deepen. Solutions become more sophisticated. Because you're not starting from scratch each time. You're continuing a conversation, building on what came before. This is why consistency matters so much. The value isn't in individual meetings. It's in the accumulation over time. Like compound interest, each meeting adds a little, and over months that adds up to transformation. I saw this in my own mastermind. The first few meetings were good, helpful, but after 6 months, the quality of thinking was exponentially better because we'd developed a shared language, shared references. We could go deeper faster. We didn't have to explain everything. We could build on existing understanding. That's the compound effect. And you can't rush it. You have to commit to the process and let it build. Over time, let me tell you about something that, well, it's harder to explain, but it's maybe the most important part of the mastermind. The chemistry. You can have all the right people, the right structure, the right intentions. But if the chemistry isn't there, it won't work. And chemistry is hard to predict. You don't know until you try. I've seen groups that, on paper, should have been perfect. Smart people, committed people, compatible goals. But when they got together, something was off. The energy felt forced, or competitive, or flat. And despite everyone's best efforts, it never clicked. And I've seen groups that seemed unlikely. People from completely different backgrounds, different ages, different everything. And somehow the chemistry was there. The thinking flowed, the energy built, and it worked beautifully. So how do you create chemistry? I'm not sure you can create it, but you can recognize it. In the first few meetings, pay attention. Does the conversation flow naturally, or does it feel stiff? Do people build on each other's ideas, or do they talk past each other? Do you leave energized or drained? Those are signals. If the chemistry is good, you feel it. There's a lightness, an ease, even when you're tackling hard problems. But if the chemistry is bad, there's tension, effort. It feels like work to keep the conversation going. And if that persists after 3 or 4 meetings, it might mean this particular group isn't the right fit. And that's okay. You can gracefully disband and try again with different people. Chemistry matters more than credentials, more than expertise, because the mastermind is built on connection. And without that, it's just people sitting in a room. Now let me talk about virtual masterminds, because when I was doing this, we met in person, always. That was the only option. But now you can meet virtually, over video calls. And I think that works, as long as you're intentional about it. The challenge with virtual is that it's easier to check out, to be half present, looking at your phone or thinking about something else. So you have to create norms, cameras on, full attention, no multitasking, and you might need to meet more frequently, because the connection doesn't build as quickly virtually. In person, you have coffee before the meeting, you chat afterwards. That builds relationship. Virtually, you show up, you meet, you leave. It's more transactional. So you compensate by meeting more often, or by adding time for informal connection. 5 minutes at the start just to check in. How's everyone doing? Not about the work, about the person. That builds the relationship that makes the mastermind work. And I've heard from people who've built strong masterminds virtually. It's possible. It just requires more intention, more discipline, because the default virtual is disconnection. But if you actively create connection, it works. Now I want to address size. How many people should be in a mastermind? I've seen it work with 3 people. I've seen it work with 8. But my experience is that 5 to 7 is ideal. Fewer than that, and you don't get enough diversity of thought. If someone's missing, the meeting suffers. More than that, and it becomes hard to manage. Not everyone gets enough time. Some people start to fade into the background. 5 to 7 gives you enough perspectives without becoming unwieldy. But that's not a hard rule. I've known successful masterminds of 3, where the thinking was so good, the connection so strong, that it worked. And I've known groups of 10 that somehow managed it. So don't be rigid. But if you're starting out, aim for 5 or 6 and see how it feels. You can always adjust. Now let me tell you about the question of homogeneity versus diversity. Should your mastermind be people like you? Same industry, same stage, same challenges? Or should it be diverse, different backgrounds, different fields, different perspectives? I've seen both work, but my preference is for diversity. Here's why. If everyone's in the same industry, you get groupthink. Everyone sees problems the same way, makes the same assumptions, misses the same blind spots. But if you bring in someone from a different field, they ask different questions. They challenge assumptions you didn't even know you were making. I had a mastermind member who was an artist, and I was working on business concepts. And at first I thought, what can she contribute? She doesn't know business. But she saw things differently. She'd say, why do you assume that? Or, have you considered? And her questions forced me to rethink foundational ideas. And the work got better because she wasn't trapped in business thinking. She brought a different lens, and that's invaluable. So I recommend some diversity. Not everyone from different fields. That might be too disconnected. But some mix. Some people in your field, some people adjacent, some people completely different. That creates the richest thinking. Now I want to talk about compensation. Should mastermind members be paid, or is this purely reciprocal? In my experience, the best masterminds are reciprocal. Everyone gives, everyone receives. There's no money involved. Because money changes the dynamic. If you're paying someone, they become a consultant, an advisor, and there's value in that. But it's not a mastermind. A mastermind is mutual, equals helping each other. If there's a power imbalance, if someone's the expert and everyone else is the student, it's not a mastermind. It's a mentorship or a consulting relationship, which are valuable, but different. So keep it reciprocal. Everyone contributes. Everyone benefits. Nobody's the authority. That creates the right dynamic for true collaborative thinking. Now let me tell you about the role of conflict, because conflict will happen. People will disagree, sometimes strongly, and that's actually good, as long as it's managed well. The worst masterminds are the ones where everyone agrees, where people nod along, say, that's a great idea, without pushing back, because that's not thinking, that's affirmation. And affirmation is nice, but it doesn't help you. What helps is someone saying, I think you're wrong about that, or have you considered the downside, or that assumption might not hold. That's uncomfortable, but it's valuable. It forces you to defend your thinking, to consider alternatives, to refine your ideas. So you want constructive conflict, disagreement without disrespect, challenge without attack, and that requires skill. You have to be able to say, "I disagree," without making it personal. And you have to be able to hear, "I disagree," without getting defensive. That's a skill, and it develops over time. In the beginning, people are careful. They don't want to offend. They soften their disagreements. But as trust builds, people get more direct, more honest, and that's when the real value emerges. So, don't avoid conflict. Embrace it. As long as it's respectful, as long as everyone's trying to help, not win, that's the key. Everyone has to be more committed to the truth than to being right. And if you have that, conflict becomes productive, not destructive. Now let me talk about something I learned from Carnegie. He said the mastermind isn't just about solving problems. It's about elevating thinking, making everyone in the group think at a higher level than they would alone. And I didn't understand what he meant at first, but over time, I saw it. In my mastermind, I started to think bigger, ask better questions, consider longer time horizons. Not because someone told me to, but because I was around people who thought that way. And it rubbed off. We become like the people we spend time with. Their thinking influences our thinking. And if you're in a mastermind with people who think well, who think big, who think strategically, you start to absorb that. Your standards rise. Your expectations of yourself increase. And that's maybe the greatest benefit. Not the specific solutions, but the elevation of your thinking, permanently. I've known people who were in a mastermind for just a year, and even decades later, they still think differently because of it. The mastermind changed their mental models, their approach to problems, and that change lasted long after the mastermind ended. So think of it not just as a problem-solving tool, but as a development tool, a way to become a better thinker. And that's worth more than any specific advice. Now I want to address a question I get asked. What if I can't find the right people? What if everyone I know isn't interested or isn't the right fit? And I understand that challenge, especially if you're in a small town or a niche field or just starting out. Here's what I suggest. Start with who you have, even if it's not perfect, even if you wish you had different people. Start with 2 or 3 committed people and begin. Because sometimes the act of starting attracts others. People hear about your mastermind, they get curious, they ask to join, and over time you find the right people. But if you wait for perfect, you might never start. Also consider going virtual. That opens up the whole world. You can find people in other cities, other countries, who are the right fit, even if they're not local. And while in-person is ideal, virtual is far better than nothing. So don't let geography stop you. Find the people wherever they are, and build the mastermind you need. Now let me tell you about the evolution of a mastermind, because it's not static. It changes over time. In the beginning, people are figuring out how to work together. There's politeness, caution, people testing the boundaries. But after a few months, that fades. People relax, get more honest, more direct, and the thinking gets sharper. And then after a year or two, you might notice the group plateaus. You're still helping each other, but it's not as dynamic, not as challenging. That's a signal that maybe the mastermind needs to evolve. Maybe someone new should join, bring fresh perspective, or maybe it's time to disband and form something new with different people at a different level. That's natural. Don't resist it. Trust the life cycle, and be willing to let go when it's time. Gratefully, it's getting late now, and I want to talk about something quieter, something that happens in the spaces between the meetings. Because the mastermind isn't just what happens when you're together, it's what happens after. When you leave a mastermind meeting, you carry the thinking with you, the questions people asked, the challenges they raised, the perspectives they offered, and those work on you, sometimes for days. I'd leave a meeting thinking I had clarity, a decision made, but then something someone said would resurface in my mind, and I'd think, wait, maybe they were right about that, or I need to reconsider, and I'd go back to the problem, look at it differently, and find a better solution. That's the invisible work of the mastermind. It doesn't stop when the meeting ends. It continues in your thinking, as you process what was said, as you integrate the perspectives. And that's part of why it's so powerful. You're not just getting advice in the moment. You're getting ongoing mental partnership, even when you're alone. Now let me talk about something I learned from watching Ford's mastermind. He had a very particular approach. He didn't want yes men. He wanted people who would tell him when he was wrong, and he'd test them. He'd propose something he knew was flawed, and wait to see who would challenge it. And the people who did, those were the ones he valued most, because he understood that the mastermind only works if people are willing to disagree, to push back, to say, I think you're making a mistake. And that requires courage, because disagreeing with the leader, with the founder, with the person who's more successful, that's hard. You risk offending them, losing their respect, being dismissed. But if you don't do it, if you just agree, the mastermind becomes useless. So Ford created safety for disagreement. He'd reward it, thank people for pushing back, show that he valued it, and that gave others permission to be honest, even when it was uncomfortable, and his thinking got better because of it. I tried to do the same in my mastermind. I'd sometimes share an idea and then pause and wait, and if everyone just nodded, I'd say, really? No one sees a problem with this? And that would invite challenge. And someone would usually speak up, well, actually, and that's what I needed. Not agreement, challenge. Because challenge refines thinking. Agreement just reinforces whatever you already believe. And that's not valuable. So if you're creating a mastermind, make it safe to disagree. Reward it. Thank people who push back. Show them that's what you want. And you'll get better thinking from everyone. Now, I want to talk about the difference between a mastermind and a board of advisors, because people sometimes confuse them. A board of advisors is people you ask for advice, usually individually. You go to this person for this expertise, that person for that, and they give you their opinion based on their knowledge. And that's valuable, but it's one-directional. They give, you receive. A mastermind is different. It's mutual. Everyone is both giving and receiving. Everyone has problems they're working on. Everyone contributes to everyone else's thinking. It's not hierarchical. It's circular. And that creates a different dynamic. In a board, you might feel like you need to impress the advisors, show them you're doing well. In a mastermind, you can admit you're struggling, because everyone is struggling with something. And that vulnerability creates connection and better thinking. So don't confuse the two. Both are valuable, but they serve different purposes. And the mastermind, because of its mutuality, often goes deeper. Now, let me tell you about something that happened in my mastermind. We'd been meeting for about a year, and one of the members was facing a really hard decision about whether to continue a business or shut it down, and he was torn. There were good arguments both ways, and we spent maybe 3 meetings on this, just thinking through every angle, the financial implications, the emotional attachment, the opportunity cost, what he'd learn from continuing, what he'd lose from quitting. And we didn't tell him what to do. We just helped him think, asked questions, challenged assumptions, offered perspectives, and slowly, over those 3 meetings, he got clear, not because we gave him the answer, but because the process of thinking out loud with people who cared helped him find his own answer. And he made the decision. And it was the right one, not because we were smart, but because the mastermind gave him space to think deeply, without pressure, without judgment, just supportive, rigorous thinking. And that's maybe the greatest gift of a mastermind. Not answers, but space to find your own answers through collaborative thinking. Now I want to address something practical. How do you invite someone to a mastermind? Because this can be awkward. You're essentially saying, I want to think with you regularly for the long term. And that's a big ask. Here's what I learned works. Be direct. Don't over-explain. Just say, I'm forming a mastermind, a small group that meets to help each other think through challenges. I think you'd be a great fit. Would you be interested? And then explain what it involves, the commitment, the regularity, the expectations, and give them time to decide. Some people will say yes immediately. They get it. They want it. Others will need to think about it. And that's fine. Don't pressure. Just invite. And trust that the right people will join. And the people who aren't ready won't. And that's okay. You want people who are fully in, not people you had to convince. Because commitment matters, and you can't manufacture that. Now let me talk about the first meeting, because it sets the tone for everything that follows. I always started with alignment. Why are we here? What do we each hope to get from this? And everyone shares, and you find the common thread, the shared purpose. And then you establish norms. How do we want to work together? What makes a good meeting? What should we avoid? And you create agreements. We'll be honest. We'll challenge each other respectfully. We'll keep what's shared confidential. We'll show up on time and prepared. Simple things, but saying them out loud creates shared expectations. And then you start the work. Someone shares a challenge, and you practice thinking together. And after that first meeting, you debrief. How did that feel? What worked? What should we adjust? And you refine the process together. That first meeting doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest and intentional. And that creates the foundation for everything that comes after. Now I want to tell you about the long-term impact of being in a mastermind. I was in my primary mastermind for almost 7 years. And by the end, those people had shaped my thinking more than any book or teacher or experience. They'd challenged me hundreds of times, offered perspectives I never would have considered, caught blind spots I didn't know I had, and over time, I became a better thinker, not just about specific problems, but in general. I learned to question my assumptions, to consider multiple perspectives, to think long-term, to see patterns, and that stayed with me. Long after the mastermind ended, those people are still in my head. When I'm facing a decision, I think, what would they ask? And I imagine the conversation, and that helps me think more clearly. That's the lasting gift of a mastermind. Not just what you learn in the meetings, but how it changes your thinking permanently. Now, let me address something that worries people. What if the mastermind becomes a burden? What if I don't want to go anymore? And that can happen. If the chemistry is wrong, if it's not serving you, if it feels like obligation instead of opportunity. And if that happens, you need to be honest with yourself first. Is this just a phase? Am I tired? Or is this genuinely not working? And if it's genuinely not working, you need to communicate, not just stop showing up, but have a conversation. This isn't feeling right for me anymore. I think I need to step back. That's hard, but it's respectful to yourself and to the group. And most people will understand. They might feel the same way, or they might be sad, but they'll respect your honesty. Don't suffer through a mastermind that's not working. Life's too short. Find what serves you, or take a break and come back later when it feels right again. Now I want to share something Carnegie told me. He said, "Hill, the mastermind is the closest thing I've found to thinking with God." And I didn't understand that at first. It sounded overly mystical. But over time I got it. When minds come together in harmony toward a higher purpose, something transcendent happens. You access intelligence that feels beyond individual capacity. Ideas emerge that feel almost divinely inspired. Not because God is literally in the room, but because collaborative thinking at its best taps into something universal, some collective wisdom that exists beyond any one mind. And I've experienced that. In moments where the mastermind was really flowing, where ideas were building on ideas, where everyone was fully present, fully engaged, and suddenly a solution would appear that no one had brought, that emerged from the synergy, and it felt almost sacred, like we'd touched something larger than ourselves. That's rare. It doesn't happen every meeting, but when it does, it's unforgettable. And it reminds you why this matters, why the mastermind is more than just practical, it's transformational. We're near the end now, and I want to leave you with something practical, something you can actually do, not just think about, but begin, because the mastermind is only valuable if you create one, if you actually do it. So let me walk you through how to start. Tonight, or tomorrow, or this week. Step 1. Identify 2 or 3 people you respect, who think well, who are committed to growth. They don't have to be in your field. They don't have to be at your level. They just have to be people you'd want to think with. Write down their names. Step 2. Reach out. Send a message. I'm thinking about starting a mastermind, a small group that meets regularly to help each other think through challenges. Would you be interested in exploring this? Keep it simple. Don't over-explain. Just invite and see who responds. Step 3. If you get interest, set up a first meeting. Maybe just an hour, to see if there's chemistry, to talk about what this could be, what you'd each want from it, and if it feels right, commit to a trial. Let's meet 4 times, and then decide if we want to continue. That removes pressure. Nobody's committing forever, just trying it. Step 4. At that first meeting, establish norms. How often will you meet? For how long? What's expected? What makes a good meeting? Create agreements together so everyone feels ownership. Step 5. Start the work. Someone shares a challenge. The group thinks together. You practice collaborative thinking, and you see what happens. That's it. That's how you begin. Simple steps, but they lead to something powerful if you actually do them. Now, I know some of you are thinking, I don't have time for this, and I understand. Life is busy. There are demands, obligations, and adding another commitment feels like too much. But let me ask you something. How much time do you spend thinking alone, worrying about problems, going in circles, feeling stuck? That's time too. And it's often wasted time because you're limited by your own perspective. But if you spent even 2 hours a month in a mastermind, you'd save dozens of hours of unproductive thinking, because the mastermind accelerates clarity. You get in 2 hours what might take weeks to figure out alone. So it's not adding time, it's using time better, more efficiently. And the return on that investment is enormous, not just in time saved, but in quality of thinking, quality of decisions, quality of outcomes. So don't dismiss this because of time. Consider it an investment in your thinking, in your success, in your life. Now, let me tell you about something I wish someone had told me. When you start a mastermind, it will feel awkward. At first, people won't know how to work together. The conversation might feel forced. You might wonder, is this actually working? And that's normal. Every mastermind goes through that phase. The awkward beginning, where people are figuring out the rhythm, learning to trust, finding their voice. But if you push through that phase, if you keep meeting, keep trying, something shifts. Usually around the third or fourth meeting, people relax, get more honest, and the thinking starts to flow. So don't quit after the first meeting if it feels awkward. Give it time. Give it 4 meetings at least, and then evaluate. Most likely by then, you'll see the value, and you'll want to continue. Now, I want to address something important. What if you're very successful already? What if you feel like you're ahead of most people? Why would you need a mastermind? And I understand that question. But here's what I learned. No matter how successful you are, you have blind spots, limited perspective, challenges you can't solve alone. And the mastermind isn't about being behind. It's about wanting to grow, to think better, to avoid mistakes. Even the most successful people I interviewed, they all had masterminds, because they understood success doesn't eliminate the need for other minds. It increases it, because the stakes get higher, the decisions get harder, the complexity increases, and you need people who can think at that level with you. So don't think, I've outgrown this. You haven't. You never will. There's always another level of thinking, another challenge to solve, and a mastermind helps you navigate that at every stage. Now, let me tell you what I hope you take away from this. The mastermind isn't optional. If you want to achieve something significant, you can't do it alone. You need other minds, not just for help, but for thinking, for perspective, for challenge. And the mastermind is the structure that makes that possible. Regular, committed, mutual, collaborative thinking. And if you create that, if you invest in it, if you show up consistently, it will transform your work, your thinking, your results. I've seen it happen hundreds of times for people at every level, in every field. The mastermind works if you work it. So my challenge to you is this. Don't just listen to this. Don't just think, that's interesting. Actually do it. This week, reach out to 2 people, invite them, start the conversation, and see what happens. You might be surprised at how ready people are, how hungry they are for this kind of connection, this kind of thinking. And you might create something that changes not just your life, but theirs too. That's the beauty of the mastermind. It's mutual. Everyone grows, everyone benefits, and the world gets a little better, because more people are thinking well, together. Now I want to say something about gratitude. Looking back on my life, the mastermind is one of the things I'm most grateful for. Not just for what it gave me, but for the relationships it created. The people in my mastermind, they became more than thinking partners. They became friends, people I trusted, people who knew me, really knew me, because we'd thought together, struggled together, celebrated together for years. And those relationships, they lasted long after the mastermind ended, because we'd built something real, something deep. And that's maybe the hidden gift of the mastermind. Not just better thinking, but better relationships, built on mutual respect, shared purpose, authentic connection. And in a world where real connection is rare, that's invaluable. So when you create a mastermind, you're not just creating a thinking structure. You're creating relationships that might last a lifetime. And that's worth more than any business success. Now I want to leave you with one more thing. The mastermind taught me something fundamental, that I am not the center of my own success, that I need others, that I'm better when I'm connected, when I'm thinking with, not alone. And that humility, that recognition of interdependence, it made me better, not just as a thinker, but as a person. It made me more open, more curious, more willing to admit I don't know, because I trusted that someone else might, and together we'd figure it out. That's a different way of being in the world. Not isolated, not self-sufficient, but connected, collaborative, mutual. And I think the world needs more of that. More people who recognize we're better together, who seek out other minds, who build masterminds, not just for success, but for connection, for growth, for the joy of thinking well with others. So that's my hope, that you'll not just create a mastermind, but that you'll embrace the spirit of it, the openness to others, the willingness to collaborate, the recognition that you need other minds and that they need yours, and together you'll create something better than any of you could alone. That's the mastermind principle, and it's one of the most powerful principles I ever learned. Now rest. You've listened for a long time, and I've shared what I know about the mastermind, how it works, why it matters, how to create one, and now it's up to you to actually do it. But that can wait until tomorrow. Tonight just rest and let what you've heard settle. Your subconscious will work on it while you sleep, and in the morning you might have clarity about who to invite, how to begin, what your mastermind might look like. But for now, rest. You don't have to figure it out tonight. You just have to be open to the possibility that you don't have to think alone, that there are people who would love to think with you, and that together you could create something powerful, something transformational for all of you. That's enough for tonight. Rest now. And tomorrow, if you feel called to reach out, to invite, to begin, then do it. But no pressure, no urgency, just possibility. The mastermind is waiting whenever you're ready, and the people you need, they're out there. You just have to invite them. But tonight, rest. Let go of having to figure it out. Let go of doing it alone. Just rest. In the knowledge that you're not alone, that other minds exist, that collaboration is possible, and that when you're ready, you can create what you need. A mastermind, a group of people thinking together, helping each other, growing together. But that's tomorrow. Tonight, just rest. You've done enough. You've listened. You've learned. You've considered. That's enough. Now, let it settle. Let it integrate. Let your mind rest. and trust that in time you'll know what to do. The mastermind will emerge when you're ready, when the right people appear, when the time is right. You don't have to force it. You don't have to rush. You just have to be open. And when the moment comes, you'll know, and you'll act, and you'll create something beautiful. But tonight, rest, sleep well, and know that you're not alone. In your thinking, in your challenges, in your journey, others are out there, thinking, struggling, growing too. And when you find them, when you come together in a mastermind, you'll discover what I discovered, that two minds are better than one, that collaboration multiplies intelligence, that together we're capable of more than we ever could be alone. That's the gift. That's the power. That's the mastermind. Now rest, and wake tomorrow ready to begin, if you choose. But no pressure, just possibility. Sleep now. The mastermind awaits. Whenever you're ready. Good night.